Marisa, you're so welcome to the Happier at Work podcast. I'm delighted to have you as my guest today. We spoke a few weeks ago and had a wonderful conversation in Spanish, and it was just such a pleasure to chat with you that day. And I'm delighted to have you back and talking about and sharing your knowledge on the Happier at Work podcast. Do you want to give people an introduction to you, how you got into doing what you're doing?
Oh, thank you, Aoife. And thank you very much for this opportunity. And yes, it was a wonderful conversation a couple of weeks ago. Um, my name is Marisa Elizundia. I'm originally from Mexico. I live in Spain, but I also worked in Germany and in the US. Um, the reason what I do is because all my life I've been working in the area of people development, not in large companies, some larger than others, and international organizations. And throughout all my life, I always discovered or became aware that when people were giving their best or their worst at their jobs, the reasons behind that were not related to the financial aspect of work,
Hmm.
but there were other areas of their experience at work that were affecting them so much that allowed them to give their best or their worst. And this is when I started saying, like, why do people work? If we take the financial aspect
Hmm.
out of the question, why are people left with? Why do people love their work, or why do they hate their work?
Yeah.
And that's when I started, through this question, like, why do people work, is when I started my research about emotional salary, and then like creating a tool that could measure what emotional salary is and kind of like dismantle it in its various aspects.
Mm. It's such, I think it's, I mean, there's a few things to kind of dive into a little bit more detail there, but it's interesting. Then the name itself, I think, and we'll come back to that. But on a previous podcast episode, we got quite philosophical on it, and we're kind of talking about, well, what is work? How to actually define what work is, and it was kind of like, it's, we're not going to go down that road today, and we certainly didn't have time to go down that road when we spoke about this before, but just this entire concept, like, why do, and it ties in with the idea of why do people work. It's not
Mhm.
just to earn a salary. Like, that might be the basic reason, but once that's covered, once you're earning money and knowing, and this again from a very philosophical perspective, that you could have any, not that you could have any job, but there are multiple jobs, let's say, to choose from. What
Mhm.
makes you stay in one place over another? And maybe that's the place that we kind of carry on this conversation, thinking about, okay, so if you have these multiple options and they're more or less offering around the same salary, then what makes you choose one place over another?
Absolutely. Like, work is the opposite of leisure.
Mm.
It is a place. I mean, it is a place where we can use all of our abilities, our skills, our competencies, and we use them for a certain purpose. Up to now, this has been the convention that we do that in return from some financial compensation. But now, as we become more philosophical, and we have had through the pandemic the time to analyze, why do we work, why do we spend so much time at work, and what do we get from it, um, is when kind of like we are discovering that work allows us to to get so much more from it than we used to,
Mm.
which means that before, like, we always tended to see work only as a transactional aspect. I give you my life, I receive money from it.
Mm.
I give you my skills, my competence, my education, and in return I have financial contribution. But now it's not that way. You have to think that we spend our the most time of our time awake in our lives
Mm.
is spent at work.
Yeah.
And to see it only through the financial aspect, it's kind of like short-sighted,
Mm.
and it's kind of like it objectifies the person. And this is why we leaders and individuals and companies, we have to redefine what work is and how we want it to be. Why? Because at the end, it has benefits for everyone. It has benefits for society, it has benefits for the individual, it has benefits for the team, and everything.
Uh, yeah, no, I love that the idea, because I was going to say, okay, so work previously was transactional. How would we define it now? But maybe it's up to each individual to define that for themselves. Like, what meaning does work hold in my life? And again, going back to your point, Marisa, that um, the pandemic gave us this opportunity to really reflect on that, and to think about, well, am I doing something just for the money? Am I doing something that's really lighting me up, that's giving me that emotional salary as well as the actual monetary salary as well?
Absolutely. It
Mm,
gave us the opportunity. Not it can I always say that the pandemic put all of us in a magnifying glass. No? So whatever we were doing right, it
mm,
became like more visible. And whatever
yeah.
we were doing wrong, it became more visible. It became
Mm,
more palpable. And I think that's the idea of emotional salary, so that you on your own, because we cannot say that our work experience is equal for all of us.
mm,
It's not. Our work experience is individual. You and I could be working on the same team, on the same company, and we would have some things in similar, of
mm,
course. But at the end, we would see different benefits that we get from work, because we are at different stages in our life. So
mm,
it's up to us to know what we want. It's up to us to know what we perceive. It's
mm,
up to us to know what we want,
yeah.
and what do we want to get from this experience, uh, from all this time that we spent at work.
Yeah.
And once we define it, then we're able to take action on it.
Mm,
But the first step, it's always to to become aware and to have a language, because our brain kind of like work with some biases that we send, with cognitive biases that say, okay, I love my work or I hate my work, but that's too simplistic.
mm,
We have to give a language of what is exactly what we like,
yeah.
what is exactly what we don't, what we would like to have more, or what we're not very comfortable with. And once we have that language, the awareness that we have becomes, oh, it's not that I hate my work. I just don't like this specific part of my work.
Mm,
And once I have this specific part of my work, I can create actions. I can discover opportunities. I can have the specific conversations to change that.
mm,
Um, and kind of like have a more objective perspective of
yeah.
my experience at work.
Yeah. And kind of less black and white as well. Less like, either going back to what you said, Marisa, either I love it or I hate it. Like, I was going to say most people hate their jobs, but I'd say like that's not necessarily the case. But research shows that engagement levels are really really low, and you would imagine that a lot of people, let's say, dislike their jobs for one reason or another. And we'll get on to the emotional salary in a minute. But I'd love
Yeah.
to know, you mentioned about work being the opposite of leisure, and it's the opportunity to use our skills, abilities, and competencies. And from what you've seen in your work history or working with clients, do most people have the opportunity to really realize that at work? Do you think?
No, no.
Hmm.
Most people at the end, there's this hedonistic treadmill that if you do your work every day, every day, every day, you do not have the opportunity to think what you have or to see
Hmm.
what you have, or what you're missing, because you do it every day. You kind of like get used to it. So I think it's always very valuable to think what you have, because
Hmm.
through the negativity bias, you're always going to be attracted to the negative. And as you said, sometimes we're not even aware of all the other things that actually they're working,
Hmm.
and are working well. Um, but I'm not saying that we should ignore the ones that are not working. I'm just saying that we should have an objective perspective of the whole experience,
Hmm.
and not only about the negatives,
Yeah.
because that will allow us to make better decisions
Hmm.
better decisions towards our work and how we relate to our work.
Mm.
And also, it will allow us to find new opportunities for action. What we've discovered is that, for example, people that were leaving their jobs because they said that they hated their work, and they suddenly they discovered that actually they didn't hate it that much, that
Mm.
there were other things that they really appreciated, and they kind of like appreciate it once they left their jobs. And
Okay.
I think that's sad,
Yeah.
because if you can give the people the opportunity to see the overall like spectrum of work, people have would have made better decisions,
Mm.
or maybe would have decided differently, or something else, or at least it would allow them to search for other jobs that were giving them what they're searching for.
Yeah. 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 Love that. So it's kind of um and we'll come on to the tool, but it's giving people the opportunity and that awareness. And I think sometimes, and I've certainly experienced this myself, if you have a, let's say, a negative experience at work, that massively, massively outweighs the positive experiences that you have. Because I think as humans, we tend to have this negative bias. And so you sort of forget all of the good things that have happened or that are happening. You take them for granted, or just that the negative just kind of taints everything, and you sort of feel like it's not going to get better, or you can't, there's no way out unless you leave. All of these kind of things going on. So it's really interesting. Do you want to maybe explain to us a little bit more about the definition of emotional salary, and then we'll talk a bit more about the tool, and how people can use it, and maybe some of the insights that you found.
Mhm. Emotional salary are all those non-financial benefits that we get from work. Um, and it's subjective, and it changes our perception from work, and it allows us to grow personally and professionally. I dare think that various things that like can distill from this definition. First of all, that it's subjective. What I told you, it's different from all of us. No. Second of all, that it changes through time.
Mm.
Our emotional salary is not fixed. It's just a picture. Imagine a photograph of us, of our experience at work now. So it changes through time. That's why it's so necessary to 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 measure it on a constant basis, to know, okay, where am I? What has changed? What actions have I taken? And so on. And third of all is to know that emotional salary um, the awareness of emotional salary and its concept will change the way we see work. Why? Because it gives us a language of what we are having, and how all the factors that constitute emotional salary, how are they being manifested at our work or not? How do they become real? You
Mm.
know, why, for example, creativity.
Mm.
Creativity for you is something different than for me, or
Mm.
autonomy or inspiration. It becomes so different depending on us. So that's why we have to kind of like bring, we as individuals, we have to bring color to each of the factors that constitute emotional salary in our experience.
Mm. I like that it's a really subjective approach, and if I can kind of probe a little bit more into this, the idea that creativity, autonomy means different things to different people. Is it the case then that it's you can sort of measure on a scale how important relatively each one of those is, and how much of those you're actually getting at the moment? So like, let's say you have more of a need for autonomy than you do for creativity, so therefore it becomes more important in that, in the barometer, then you can say, well, actually the amount of autonomy that you're getting is not fulfilling the need that you have for autonomy, essentially.
Yeah, so we measure three things.
Mm.
We measure first the emotion, the 10 factors. How do they become true in
Mm.
each in your work? The second is what you mentioned, the relative importance.
Mm.
And the third one is the action and opportunities.
Yeah.
Are you taking the opportunities that you have at work
Mm.
to change your emotional salary? And I think that's hugely important. Another thing that is also important is that even though emotional salary is important on an individual basis, there are like responsibilities. There is a co-responsibility um, aspect of it. For example, companies play a huge role on emotional salary, and especially leaders. Leaders play an immensely important role in emotional salary, and of course, the individual. Um, what does it mean? That, for example, even if I'm super aware as a person about my emotional salary and what I want to do, if my leader is not supporting it, if my leader is not doing anything to improve, to allow me to improve my emotional salary, actually that's not going to work. Like it's like, imagine like an animal working with three legs.
Mm.
Sometimes someone is going to fall.
Yeah.
And I think this also changes the role of the leader, because the leader right now is not only a person who is also responsible for, like for the completion of objectives or for the results or anything. It's also responsible or co-responsible of the emotional salary of their team,
Mm.
and the company as well, to give the resources, to give the space, uh, and to have the intention that that people become that are really important, that people are their priority.
Mm. Yeah. You raised a really interesting point, and it's something that you mentioned earlier as well, is whether or not people are taking action. Like, I am a little bit obsessed with this idea of the knowing doing gap, because oftentimes we know what we need to do, but we're not necessarily doing that. Um, and any thoughts around that? So, like, if this provides you with a list of actions that you need to take in order to improve it. So we got onto the leader role in relation to that in a second. But as an individual, is there anything you see? Like, are people stopping themselves? Are they self sabotaging? Like, what is the reason they're not taking action necessarily?
I think because we've been trained that this is only what I can get from work.
Okay. Yeah.
Like we've been trained through our lives that, okay, like this is everything that work can gives you. So I think it needs a reshape of our brain, that work can give us more than we are having now. So we have to retrain our brains and our society that work can give us more, the financial aspect of it. The second is um, that we think that um, whatever we do will serve no purpose. It's like this personal growth aspect that everyone is talking about, but it doesn't help me. So yes, it needs kind of like the intention and the attention to make it happen. And third of all, do not forget, society, you're not on your own. Never, you're not on your own. So use your network, use your colleagues, use your friends to help you to help you increase your emotional salary, or to help you take action. This is also one of the key roles of the leader and of the team, that they are also a very important aspect, a very important factor that allows others to increase their emotional salary. I
Mm.
always say that if you want to increase your emotional salary, start by increasing the emotional salary of others.
Mm.
Because once you do that, you're going to see firsthand the impact it has on others, and also the impact it has on you. Because also we are kind of like trained to receive and receive and receive. And we have to kind of like a bit change a bit that aspect. And it's not only about receiving, but also giving.
Mm.
And I think that sounds idealistic, but our research and research as such has proved that
Mm.
over and over, that if you really want to change your reality, start changing the reality of others.
Mm.
And that kind of like starts moving
Yeah.
that aspect. What
Yeah.
does it mean in terms of emotional salary? Um, for example, start appreciating others, start celebrating others, um, start allowing people to use their creativity, or allow others to increase their skills, mentor someone, coach someone, or listen carefully to what others say and find what others say insightful. Um, like try to also be an inspiring role for others, uh, and so on and so forth.
Because that's exactly what I was going to ask. This idea, and someone recommended, I can't remember exactly who it was now, who recommended a book called The Go Giver. I think it was
Mhm.
Aaron Burnett, a conversation I had with him on the podcast, and he recommended this book. It's only small, it's short, it's quite an easy read, but it's the reason I suppose for it is it facilitates this mindset change from a I need to take and I need to do everything for myself and I need to win at all costs to how can I help other people, how can I put other people first, and then it will come back to you tenfold. It will kind of come back to you reciprocated because you've put other people kind of first ahead of yourself, and then they will do the same for you,
Mhm.
essentially.
Or not, and even, I mean, even if you don't expect anything out of it, you will
Mm,
see
yeah.
the impact it has on others.
Mm,
You will see firsthand how it changes everything.
yeah.
And once you see that, you start searching also for it. For example, imagine I'm lacking belonging.
Mm,
No, I don't. Then if I start connecting with others, if I start calling others, if I start searching for, like for this sort of um, sense of purpose of belonging to a group,
mm,
immediately it will increase
yeah.
my sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Also creativity by, for example, by allowing other, by opening the conversation. Hey, what ideas do you think I can have about this?
Mm,
You will then get inspired,
mm,
and then through inspiration you will increase your creativity.
mm,
So this is also very interesting about emotional salary, that it's not like the 10 factors that, or the factors that compose it, they're not exclusive.
mm,
They kind of like interrelate with each other.
mm.
So if you affect one, it will go like a domino effect. It will immediately affect others, and it will immediately affect your work, your relationship, your work, your feeling towards your work.
Mm, yeah. No, I like this.
And
I
and
think.
some people not criticize, but like they tend to see that what I say, or what my research says, it's too idealistic, it's too
Mm,
nice. And this again shows me, why do we need to think that work and our experience of work shouldn't be nice?
mm,
Why
yeah.
are we so skeptical about
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do we? And I think it's basically because up to now, leaders and organizations have had the upper hand
Mm,
on work relationships.
mm,
And I think right now, society is changing, and that we are becoming, individuals are becoming more empowered, and they want to know what they actually have or perceive from their work that's non-financial.
mm,
um, and they want to measure it, and they want to compare it. And that's why I think this relationship is going to change. It's
yeah.
becoming to become more equal.
And that was something that I wanted to come back to that you had mentioned earlier, that work, and I loved how you phrase it, work can give us so much more than just the financial aspect, because I think, societally we're conditioned to think that work is supposed to suck. I think that's kind of how we grow up. Now, I've since I started working, I pretty much have loved most of the jobs that I've been in. I've really enjoyed work. I love connecting with people. I love all of those kind of things that you're talking about. But I did have some experiences that led me down that led me onto the path I'm on now, if I'm being honest. So I'm really grateful to have had those experiences, because not everyone has that positive experience at work. And I think if we can educate people, and I suppose it's part of my role is to educate people that work can actually be good and you get paid for it. And I think, again, it goes back to philosophizing exactly what work is, because if we're getting paid for something that we enjoy, maybe that's kind of like, but I would do this for free anyway because I enjoy it so much, but I have the added benefit of being paid for it. So I think there's all of these things sort of tied up, and maybe it is that piece around educating people and not to say that employees have the upper hand, but to let them know that they have a choice now. So if they're in a situation where they're not getting that emotional salary benefit in addition to the financial salary that they're getting, that they do have the option to look for something else where they will actually
Mhm.
get that.
And also you have to think that the work experience is not always happy, happy, happy. It's
Exactly.
not,
Yeah.
it's not that way. I
Mm.
mean, that's not, I don't believe that. It's a question. For example, there are some challenges
Mm.
that you face at work that allow you to grow
That's
professionally, that
yeah.
allow you to grow personally. For example, imagine, um, for example, that you have a super a difficult project and you have to deliver and super stressful, but that allowed you to grow your professional skills in a
Mm.
way that you wouldn't have if you wouldn't have that work.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the same, for example, it allows you to forgive. It allows you to be honest. It allows you to be humble,
Mm.
and all of that, those opportunities happen at the time you
Yeah.
spend at work. And I'm not saying that it's always it has to be wonderful, but it has to be analyzed how it helps you,
Mm.
how it helps you become a better person, a better professional, a better friend, a better colleague. Um, and I think that's what we mean about emotional salary, that it's not always about like grade. It's about analyzing it. It's
Mm.
about exploring it
Yeah. Yeah.
in,
But
in its different facets.
it's interesting, Marisa, as well that you say it helps you to be a better friend because I'm a firm believer that the time that you spend at work, you take that home with you. So if you're miserable doing what you're doing, you take that and an impact on every aspect of your life. I know certainly, I suppose it's hard to tell from my own experience of sharing those because I think when you share those negative experiences that you have at work, you just feel a sense of relief. But I know certainly being on the receiving end of someone saying the same thing over and over and over again, it becomes quite cumbersome and quite difficult to listen to because they're not necessarily taking any action on the situation that, and I'm talking about this from a friend perspective when you're just listening to this again and again. And it's like, okay, so how do we kind of move that? So I think if you can take personal responsibility for the experiences that you're having at work, take action towards improving it, then I can see how that would have a positive impact not only on your colleagues but also on friendships and relationships.
Mhm. Exactly. That's the kind of like the systemic impact
Mm.
of emotional salary, that it does not only affect you, as you said, like if you're miserable at work, you're going to come home and be, I mean, you're going all the commute that you go to your work, you're not going to be friendly because you're miserable,
Mm.
and also with your family. So it has an impact on society. um, and a great experiences at work will also have a positive impact society. And that's something I think companies in their have to really think about. What is their impact in society by the experience of work they're giving their employees? And this is something not many people are analyzing, um, because it is true. It is true that um, the better experience you give to your employees, the better impact you have on society. Um, and I think we should all analyze ourselves, and how and what everything we do at our work is impacting everything we touch. So the idea, as you correctly mentioned, um, that the separate, that there was a time when say whatever you do in your personal life shouldn't affect your work life and vice versa. That was never true. I
Mm.
mean, we're not robots that we
Yeah,
are
yeah.
like
You don't
that
just
are
check
switch off
yourself at the
one
door.
off and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and then you turn on the other part.
yeah.
That's kind of like saying, like you're a robot and you don't
Mm.
have to. Of course it affects you. I mean, of course if your boss screams at you, or your
Mm.
your colleague lets you down, or you don't feel even seen at work, it
Mm.
will have an impact
Yeah.
on how you see yourself and how you see others and how you react to others.
Mm.
And this is why I am so vehement that we all have to think, what is what what is what work gives you that's
Mm.
non-financial? How can you take the most of it? How is it impacting your life? And how you can increase it? Or, how can you find new opportunities to take action to change that experience?
Mm. I think this is kind of a new way of thinking for a lot of people. And
Mhm.
I think sometimes we expect stuff to land on our laps nearly that, or look for opportunities that exist currently within an organization rather than thinking about ways to create our own opportunities based on problems that we encounter at work, and like how can we find solutions for those. I've heard so many stories recently of people identifying something that's not working very well in a system in at work, and they somehow like that became an additional part of their role, let's say, and eventually that turned into a role in itself. And then it required a team. And so it just kind of grew and took off from there. So I think they're really positive examples of taking that personal responsibility for your experience at work, identifying issues and not just waiting for something or looking for opportunities that exist already, but seeking out new opportunities where you can contribute in a different way at work. And you know, again, thinking about what is it that I'm getting, and what role does this job play in the grander scheme of things of my career, and what steps and what can I get from that to take the next step that I want to take in my career. How can I, for want of a better word, how can I use this job to kind of catapult me into what it is that I want to do next, whether that's in within that organization or whether it's elsewhere.
Yeah, I completely get it, because sometimes it's not that I mean, you can find opportunities, that most of the opportunities are there.
Mm.
We just need to grab them, but not only grab them, uh, take action. What I always say is that every great idea or every new thing that you want to change goes together with an Excel sheet. That means that there are always specific actions that you need to take, very small, but you need to take them
Mm.
in order to get there. For example, if I want a new job, no, and I want to be promoted in my career, first I have the vision. I have the vision to yes, I want that job. Yes, I want to earn that salary, and I want to get that position. But just the wishing part is not enough.
Mm.
uh, and also the visualizing is not enough. I need to know what skills I need to encourage. How are I going to test it? Um, what other steps do I need? What conversations I need to take? What new challenges I need to take, and when? And all of that needs to be kind of like planned. So it's not that opportunities fall. I mean, the
Mm.
idea that we have, like, oh, a great leader is going to tell us, hey, you're amazing. I want to get you promoted.
Mm.
Um, like
Yeah.
that kind of like, because I've seen that you're so good that
Yeah.
you deserve this great position. That actually never happens.
Mm.
Like that if it happens, it's kind of like a miracle. You kind
Yeah.
of like have to shape it according to what you want, and
Mm.
you have to make it happen. And I know that sounds very individualistic, but it's true, because it
Mm.
gives you a sense of direction.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense that there are next steps to follow.
Mm.
And through each step you need to measure if it's working, if it's not, are you happy or not, and
Mm.
if
Yeah.
if it does it satisfy you enough
Yeah.
or
And
not.
sometimes I feel we limit our thinking to our existing situation, so that if we're
Hmm.
looking for opportunities, we're looking either internally at opportunities that are being advertised or externally at something with a similar skill set or a similar job title or something like that as a reason to kind of move. But I suppose for me, and it sounds like for you as well, Marisa, that it's about thinking bigger about like what's the grand picture here, and what is it that I want to actually ultimately get from work in addition to the money that I'm earning.
Hmm. Absolutely. And what I don't want people is to think that that the moments that you have when you don't feel great at work,
Mm.
that you have to ignore them. No, we all have had
Yeah.
those moments.
Mm.
We've all had those moments when you say, oh God, I just cannot manage this anymore. But it's just taking, as you mentioned, it's just taking, maybe for a coffee break, or maybe for a lunch break, or maybe for an evening, just to take a step back and say, okay, why am I doing this? What
Mm,
am I actually getting from it that it's
mm,
non-financial? And just write it down and say, okay, I'm doing this because I'm also gaining this and this and this and this. And by doing that, it will kind of like give us another perspective and allows us to create space for taking action. So what I want to say is don't, don't ignore the bad experiences. Of course not. We all had them. But just try to, okay, I have these experiences, but what else am I having?
mm,
And by writing them down or by becoming aware of them, it kind of like give us space for
mm.
other things to come.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like that, and I think just the action of reflecting on what is it that I'm getting. Sometimes we get so caught up in the day to day of what we're actually doing that we neglect to take time out to say, not to be too individualistic, like you said, but like, what's in this for me,
Absolutely.
what am I getting from this from a personal development or a professional development perspective?
The idea of emotional salary came from such an experience. As you're a consultant, I am, and we're freelancers or we have our own company. I think everyone that's listening to us that has their own company knows that it's not always, like it's not always soaring and you're happy. There's emotional, like ups and
Challenging,
downs,
yes.
challenges that
Mm.
where the downs are really downs and you doubt yourself, like I wouldn't say 24/7, but 23/7. And it is that experience. So I was in that moment when I was like, say, why am I doing this?
Mm.
Why is this happening? I said, like, okay, so what why am I doing this? Apart from the money that I can earn, why am I doing? And I started really writing down
Mm.
everything I was getting from work or from my work experience. And after that, I said, actually, I'm an emotional millionaire.
Mm.
And just the realization about that made me think, what if everyone were able at least to analyze their work like this?
Mm.
And that's when the idea came, like to do some research about what work is and what the
Yeah.
meaning of work, what people got from work that was non-financial. And that's something that I wanted to give kind of like the world the opportunity to do that,
Mm.
to kind of like see the work through that lens,
Mm.
not only of what you were not gaining, which is what I was seeing it, and
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep from that, but also from the other part that what I
Mm.
was really having.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, and I think again, it's a shift in mindset, isn't it? From focusing on what you don't have, which causes a bit of a negative spiral, to shifting the focus on what you do have, which causes those things to multiply because you focus more on them. You become more aware of where you're getting that sense of autonomy, where you're bringing your creativity, all of those things that really light us up. I'm looking forward to, and I know like we spoke about this before, but I am looking forward to taking the assessment to see myself, what is it? Do you want to tell people a little bit more about the tool, or is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap things up?
Yes, the tool is is based on research that we did with participants from 22 countries, and we're very proud to say that like the results have been very, very positive. And it tests basically 10 factors that I think we can all relate about our work. The first one, of course, is autonomy.
Mm.
No, that it doesn't it relates of what do you get what does your work gives you in terms of how can you manage it from your values, from your own values, personal and professional values. Not about it's not about working 4 days a week or 3 days a week, or it's just about managing your own time
Mm.
and your projects according to what's important for you.
Mm.
The second is belonging. The third one is creativity. The fourth one is direction, which is about you and your career and your future. Um, the fifth one is enjoyment. Then we have inspiration, and then mastery, and then professional growth, prof personal growth, and purpose. And this, I mean, the emotional side can be taken from everyone around the world through our website, but I still invite, even if you don't do the barometer, I invite all of your listeners to just think of how these 10 factors become true in their lives. How do they manifest in their lives? And see, like, do they become real? How? And if not, how do I want them to be?
Mm.
And I think that's the best part of it, that you, by analyzing them and by exploring them in your reality, you can literally start taking action.
Mm.
And if you have responsibility in a team, also, am I giving these 10 factors to my people? Am I allowing this aspect to grow?
Mm.
And also, if you're a business owner, also think that. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Um, Now, Marisa, the question I ask everyone who comes on the podcast: what does being happier at work mean to you?
For me, being happier at work means, like, to know that the time I spend working is a time that I get something from it, apart from the financial, that emotional, I feel richer, and I feel more encouraged and more supported through my work. That the time spent at work is time well spent.
Hmm. I love that approach, actually. Yeah, just thinking about how do you spend your time, and not to digress too much, but I'm reading a book at the moment called 4,000 Weeks, which is all about how much time we have in our lives and how we spend time and how we tend to be future focused and we do things now to gain something in the future. But if you can reflect on a day that you've spent at work and say that was actually time well spent, I grew, or it was challenging, but I feel rewarded because it was such a challenge, and it gave me that opportunity, or I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted today, whatever it might be.
Or I
I
got
really, really,
inspired by this
yeah,
conversation. On actually, I'm so happy because I had even to inspire others.
yeah,
Or actually, I had fun,
yeah,
and I, like, with colleagues. Or actually, I felt rewarded because someone loved what I did.
yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Really, really lights us up. Now, if people want to find out more about the emotional salary, if they want to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
And with LinkedIn, and LinkedIn, Marisa Elizundia, I'm there, and also Emotional Salary Barometers in LinkedIn, our LinkedIn page, and also through our homepage,
Yeah.
which is www.emotional-salary.com.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much for your time today. Absolute pleasure to chat with you as always. And I look forward to staying connected.
Aoife, thank you very much for this opportunity.